They used to smirk when I offered my ideas. Stay in your lane, they'd say, with that patronizing chuckle like they knew something I didn't. But the day I pulled up in my custom-ordered luxury car, windows down, engine purring, designer shades on, everything about their tone changed. Hi, I'm Natalie James. I'm 32, a digital business strategist, and for most of my life, I've been the invisible one in my family, the quiet observer who didn't speak unless spoken to. But that's the thing about quiet women. You never know when one is about to roar. I wasn't born into wealth, but I was born into a family who acted like they were royalty. My parents, both traditional and image-obsessed, measured success by corporate job titles, holiday cards with matching outfits, and how much louder your voice could be at the dinner table. My older brother was their golden child, a lawyer with the perfect wife and predictable path. Me? I freelanced. I coded. I created websites. And they never missed a chance to call it a hobby. At every family gathering, the jokes would start early. Natalie, still playing with those laptop projects? My uncle would tease while sipping his whiskey. Let us know when you get a real job, sweetheart. I'd smile, nod, and excuse myself quietly, but inside, I was planning something none of them saw coming. I started taking freelance gigs in college, nothing major, just designing logos and basic e-commerce websites. But over time, I built a small, steady clientele. I didn't post about it online. I didn't talk about it at family dinners. I just worked. Quietly. Relentlessly. Curiously, they never once asked what I was building behind that laptop. By the time I was 27, I had developed a full-stack digital consultancy with 6 remote developers and a project manager under me. I automated systems for small businesses, scaled influencer brands, and ran back-end operations for several 7-figure coaches. But to my family, I was still the one who worked from her couch. The dismissiveness didn't hurt at first. But over the years, the mockery started to sting, especially from my cousins. They flaunted luxury handbags and leased cars gifted by their parents, while I silently stacked every dollar I earned. They thought I was just frugal. What they didn't realize was I was making moves they couldn't even spell. One Thanksgiving, I remember sitting at the far end of the table while my cousin Julia raved about her fiancé's promotion at Deloitte. Everyone clapped. Then my aunt turned to me and asked, "Still doing that online thing?" I opened my mouth to answer, but then decided not to. Instead, I looked down, smiled, and nodded. Something shifted inside me that day. The next morning, I doubled down. I hired 2 new specialists. I invested in a rebrand. And for the first time ever, I created a personal business Instagram page. I didn't care if my family saw. In fact, I hoped they wouldn't. I was building this for me, not for their approval. The breakthrough came when one of my systems helped a small boutique business scale to $2.4 million in revenue in just 10 months. The founder was featured in Forbes, and she credited my team. That was the tipping point. Suddenly, referrals flooded in, and I had to start a waitlist. But I still didn't post about it. I still didn't buy anything flashy. Not yet. Instead, I bought peace. I upgraded my apartment, hired a housekeeper, and took a 2-week vacation in Bali where I closed 3 deals poolside. No filters. No flaunting, just quiet power. And still, every time I visited my family, it was the same tone. "So, when are you going to settle down and find some stability?" One evening, my brother cornered me in the kitchen. "You know, Nat, you're smart, but this whole gig economy thing, don't you want something solid?" I smiled. "I'm good, Ryan." I didn't owe him or anyone else an explanation, but I did owe myself a celebration. That's when I bought it. My dream car. A custom-ordered, obsidian black luxury electric vehicle with cream leather interior and gold detailing. Not because I needed it to prove anything, but because I could. It was my gift to myself for surviving the noise and staying true to my own vision. The car arrived 2 weeks before my cousin's engagement party. I didn't plan to make a statement. I just didn't want to show up in my usual Uber. When I pulled into the driveway, all conversation stopped. Literally. You could hear the engine hum as I parked. My cousin actually dropped her phone. The first to approach was my uncle, the same one who used to call me a Wi-Fi wizard. "Is this yours?" he asked, circling the car like a shark sniffing a drop of blood. I smiled. "Yes. Picked it up last week." He blinked. "And what exactly do you do again?" My brother, ever the skeptic, tried to downplay it. "Lease, right? Gotta be." I didn't respond. I just handed my keys to the valet and walked inside like I'd been doing this for years. Let them wonder. Let them sit with their confusion. I was done explaining. Throughout the party, relatives whispered. Some tried to bring it up casually. "You're doing well, huh?" Others avoided eye contact. But the biggest shift? My parents. My mother, who once told me to stop playing small and marry rich, suddenly wanted to talk strategy. My dad asked if I could give him a tour of the car after dinner. And my brother? He stopped mocking. He started asking questions. I won't lie, it felt good. Not the attention, but the silence that came with it. For once, I wasn't being talked over or talked down to. For once, my results did the talking. And yet, a part of me still grieved the fact that it took a car for them to finally see me. After that party, things shifted permanently. My mom started forwarding me articles about female entrepreneurs. My dad asked for help optimizing his small consultancy's digital presence. My brother wanted to grab coffee and pick my brain. But the truth? I didn't build all this for their approval. I built it because I believed in myself. When they didn't point one Sunday, while sitting on my balcony with a matcha latte, I thought back to those early days, those long nights in hoodies, testing automations, sending cold emails, watching tutorials at 2 a.m. That girl had no fancy car, no praise, no recognition. But she had vision. And that was everything. I eventually started speaking at women in tech panels and mentoring young freelancers. Not because I wanted to be in the spotlight, but because I knew what it felt like to be underestimated. To be told you don't belong. To be told to stay in your lane. Funny thing is, when you build your own lane, you don't have to compete in anyone else's race. You don't have to wait for permission to accelerate. You don't need approval to pass. You just drive. Now, every time I step into that car, it's not about the leather seats or the sleek design. It's about remembering that power doesn't always come with a title or a loud voice. Sometimes, it shows up in silence. Sometimes, it arrives in the form of a girl who refused to shrink. To the ones who doubted me, thank you. You helped me build something indestructible. Not just a business, but a mindset. One that says, I define success on my own terms, and next time someone tells me to stay in my lane, I'll smile, slide into my driver's seat, and remember, I built the whole damn road. After that night at the engagement party, word traveled faster than I expected. Suddenly, cousins who never replied to my texts were reaching out, asking for coffee or quick advice on their side hustles. A few even tried to play it off like they'd always believed in me. I didn't call them out. I didn't need to. What none of them realized was that I had gone through years of being invisible. Years of sitting at dinner tables where no one asked me how my work was going. Years of scrolling through my own financial dashboards in silence while everyone else bragged about bonuses and company perks. I had learned how to clap for myself long before anyone else joined in. A week after the party, my mother invited me over, just the two of us. I hesitated, wondering if this would be another conversation about when I was finally going to settle down. But I went anyway. Curiosity outweighed caution. We sat in the kitchen, the same place where I had once overheard her telling my aunt, Natalie's smart, but she's just not assertive enough to make it big. She poured us both tea. No small talk, no passive-aggressive questions. Just this, I owe you an apology. I blinked. For what? Asterisk, for not seeing you sooner. For thinking your path was less valid just because it didn't look like everyone else's. I didn't understand it then. But I do now. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I had fantasized about this moment for years, thinking I'd feel vindicated or maybe even smug. But all I felt was peace. She had said the words. And I realized, I didn't need her apology to move forward, but it was nice to have it. That night, I went home and sat in my car before heading inside. I ran my hand across the steering wheel and exhaled. This car wasn't revenge. It wasn't validation. It was a symbol. A reminder that I had chosen myself when no one else had. In the following months, I continued growing my consultancy. I hired 2 more women, both of whom had been told they weren't business-minded enough. I mentored them the way I wished someone had mentored me. We celebrated small wins like big ones and made space for each other's ideas, even the ones that sounded wild at first, and then something unexpected happened. I got an offer to be acquired. A major tech firm wanted to absorb my team, my systems, and bring me on as a strategic advisor. The number they offered made my breath hitch. I hadn't even been looking to sell, but there it was, proof that I hadn't just built something good. I'd built something valuable. I didn't take the offer. Not because I didn't want the money, but because I finally knew the worth of what I had created. I wasn't building this to cash out. I was building something bigger. A legacy for every underestimated girl sitting behind a laptop screen, hearing people laugh in the next room. Still, I flew out to New York for the meeting, just to see who they thought they were buying. I showed up in my power suit, heels clicking across the marble floors, and watched the executives do a double take when I introduced myself. One of them even said, "I thought you'd be older." I smiled, crossed my legs, and replied, "Most visionaries start young." It's funny how perception works. The girl they once told to stay in her lane now had the power to draw her own map, and people were lining up for directions. Sometimes, I drive past my old neighborhood just to remind myself where I came from. I see my old bedroom window, the one I used to stare out of while dreaming about more. I park for a second, look up, and whisper a thank you to the girl who kept going, to the quiet moments, to the loneliness that built resilience, because now, when I show up to family gatherings, I'm not hiding in corners or brushing off backhanded compliments. I'm leading conversations. I'm inspiring the younger cousins. I'm taking up space, and not just with my car. The funny thing is, no one tells me to stay in my lane anymore. They just ask how I built the road. A few months after the acquisition offer, I received an invitation that made me pause. It was from my cousin Julia, the same one who once rolled her eyes when I said I couldn't make her bridal shower because I was closing a launch week. She was now running a small fashion brand, apparently. And the invite? She wanted me to speak at her networking event as a guest expert on scaling a digital brand. I reread the message 3 times. The same girl who used to say, "Not everyone can afford to play entrepreneur," now wanted me to share my insights with her peers. The irony wasn't lost on me. But I said yes, not for her, but for the younger women who'd be in the room. The night of the event, I wore a sleek black blazer, minimalist jewelry, and flats, because power doesn't always come in heels. As I walked into the venue, I felt it again, that hush. That pause when people realize you don't look how they imagine success to look. I smiled. Let them wonder. I took the mic, introduced myself simply, and spoke from the same place I always had experience. I told them how I scaled my first $10,000 month by building boring but effective systems. How I prioritized clarity over clout. How I chose silence over shouting, and still won. But the moment that stayed with me happened afterward. A young woman, maybe 19, came up to me, eyes wide and hopeful. She said, "I've never heard anyone talk about building success quietly. Everyone just talks about going viral." I smiled and handed her my card. "Trust me," I told her. "Quiet doesn't mean small. Quiet can be unstoppable." That night, I drove home with music low and windows down, thinking about how far I'd come, not just in dollars, but in impact. My family started treating me differently, too, not just with respect, but with curiosity. My father even asked if I could help him digitize part of his consulting business. He'd never asked me for help before. And for once, it didn't feel patronizing, it felt like trust. But the biggest shift happened during our annual holiday dinner. I was carving the turkey, something my mom always insisted only the head of the family should do, when she placed her hand gently on mine and said, "Natalie, I want you to do it this year. You've earned it." It was such a simple gesture, but it said everything. I didn't cry, though I felt it build in my chest. I just nodded and sliced the first piece. Because finally, I wasn't the afterthought. I wasn't the girl who worked online. I was the one who built her own world, and invited others in. I've learned that sometimes, you don't need to fight for recognition. You just need to keep showing up, doing the work, staying the course. Eventually, the world catches up, and when they do, they won't just see the car, or the clothes, or the confidence. They'll see the years it took to become the woman who never stopped believing in herself. So, if someone ever tells you to stay in your lane, I hope you smile the way I did, because when you know your worth, you realize, you weren't in their lane to begin with. You were paving your own. The next year of my life changed everything, not just for me, but for how I viewed success itself. I had more than I ever thought I'd want: financial freedom, professional respect, and a team of brilliant women who trusted me to lead. But something unexpected happened. The more I gained, the more I realized I wanted to give. IT started small, offering free strategy sessions to early-stage founders who reminded me of myself. Girls working late nights in their dorms, women balancing caregiving with coding, entrepreneurs too embarrassed to say they didn't understand business taxes. I saw myself in every one of them, and it hit me. I hadn't just survived being dismissed, I'd built a blueprint. So I created The Quiet Path, a digital mentorship platform specifically for women who were tired of being overlooked, underpaid, or underestimated. I didn't blast it on social media. I didn't do launch parties. Just a quiet beta launch through my email list and one live Zoom workshop. Within a month, over 600 women signed up, and then one morning, I opened my inbox and saw a name that stopped me cold: Julia Reynolds. My cousin. She'd signed up. Not as a speaker. Not to collaborate. Just as one of the members. Just like everyone else, there was no note. No, "Hey, it's me." Just her name, her email, and a completed intake form that read, "I've been trying to build a real brand but feel like I skipped the basics. I want to finally learn the right way." I stared at the screen for a long time. She had once rolled her eyes at my "the little tech hustle." Now she was turning to me for guidance. Not in arrogance, but in humility. And that, more than anything, showed me how far we both had come. I welcomed her. Quietly. Just like everyone else thought. A few weeks later, she messaged me inside the platform and said, "I didn't know how hard you worked until I started trying to do it myself. I get it now. I'm sorry for how I treated you before." I sat back in my chair, overwhelmed, not with pride, but with something else. Grace. People change. If we let them. Not everyone in my family came around. Some still called what I did internet stuff. Some still bragged louder than they listened. But that didn't matter anymore, because I knew what they didn't. Success built in silence is still success, impact born in humility is still impact, and legacy, real legacy, isn't in how loud you are. It's in who you lift. One evening, after a mentorship call, I stood in my driveway and looked at the car that once turned heads at a party. It wasn't just a vehicle, it was the first symbol I allowed myself to enjoy openly. Not to impress, but to remind me what was possible when I didn't quit. I no longer drove it for attention. I drove it with gratitude. My younger cousin Zoe, just 19, called me around that time. She said she was considering dropping out of business school because her ideas didn't feel like they'd ever be taken seriously. Her father, my uncle, had told her to be more realistic. Sound familiar? I told her to come over. We sat on my balcony, legs curled under soft blankets, tea in hand. I showed her my first website, my first logo mock-up, my first pitch deck, bad fonts and all. I showed her that none of it started perfect, but all of it mattered, and as she left, I handed her a set of keys, not to my car, but to the private co-working loft I had just opened downtown. A space for women like us to work, dream, and build without needing to shout. She blinked. "Are you serious?" I smiled. "Someone once told me to stay in my lane. Now I build the lanes." She teared up. "I won't waste it," she whispered. "You won't," I said. "You're just getting started." These days, I still work behind the scenes. Still in my favorite hoodie most mornings. Still choosing clients based on values, not their follower count. I don't need applause. I just need purpose. And every day, I find more of it in the stories of women stepping into their power, quietly and brilliantly. If you had told me 5 years ago that the girl who was laughed at for freelancing would one day run a 6-figure mentorship program, speak at global conferences, and fund startup grants for first-gen women, I would have laughed. But the truth is, I always knew. Even when they didn't, even when they told me to stay small, even when they called it a phase, I knew. And if you're reading this, wondering if you're crazy for believing in yourself even when no one else does, I'm here to tell you you're not crazy. You're just early. Keep building, keep choosing yourself, and one day, when the world finally catches up, you'll smile like I did, as you drive right past the limits they tried to place on you.